Hello, everyone, and welcome to Moving Medicine Partners podcast. I am your host, Zoe Taylor, real estate agent in St. Louis, founder of Moving Medicine Partners, and your host for the day. And I'm so excited to be here with Leslie Mathews. Leslie is a therapist, former attorney, former physician spouse, and the host of her own podcast, Pulling Threads. You have worn many hats. You still wear many hats. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I feel like you're a cat with 9 lives.
Kind of, yes.
You've had a lot of journeys, but I feel
I
like
have.
tell me about this journey. Where are you at right now? Where you been?
Where I am now. Well, I'll start with where I've been and I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible because there were many times when I didn't know how it was all going to fit together, but now it has done so beautifully. I actually started off as a brain injury speech pathologist in St. Louis at Barnes Jewish Hospital. After working in the neurology, neurosurgery unit there, I decided I wanted to go back to medical school. And simultaneously, like right around the exact moment I was making that decision and applying, I met my future spouse who was already in residency at Barnes. And we quickly came to the conclusion that we wouldn't be able to maintain like 2 medical lives. We had the brilliant idea that I would go to law school and study healthcare law instead, which is funny in retrospect because somehow we thought that me being a healthcare attorney would be less demanding and stressful and more balanced for us than having 2 physician lives. So now looking back,
Interesting.
yes, that was, you could call that error in judgment number 1.
Yeah.
So I did go to SLU Law, got a health law certificate specialty, also got a master's in health administration while I was there just for fun, and then practiced a very short period of time after we relocated to Florida. And that's an important part of the journey that I know we'll circle back to. But we relocated. I worked a really short window of time because we purchased a home, we gutted it, and then we were also pregnant with our 3rd child. And our second together, I already had a 13-year-old. So at that moment, there was a realization that gutting and rehabbing a home and maintaining like 2 very demanding careers, the beginning of their
And children,
careers,
which is basically like a third career.
correct.
Yeah.
A son in really competitive soccer. So we made the choice for me to stop working and stay home. And that was another probably poor choice on our half. But then I took up photography and committee chair person at the kids' school. Got really busy with all of that, led groups, studied health coaching, like anything I could do to not just be staying home and just taking care of the kids, any reason or excuse I could come up with to start a new endeavor, I did. That experience of just being mom and wife was not great for me personally. But in those years, I did develop a really big, like a huge love for photography, and my creative juices were able to flow more than they ever had been because there really wasn't a lot of pressure for me to have an income. So I could really do it as a hobby and make a little bit of money. And then we decided to get a divorce. And at that point, I knew I needed a career again. And I knew it was going to be something in the wellness or mental health space. So during the divorce process, I started studying mindfulness and did some courses through Brown University, which was incredible. And that time period where I could really get quiet helped me see like the path forward as a therapist. So all that to say, as a therapist and a coach working a lot with women who are going through divorce, breakup, big life changes like job and career changes, and people dealing with their past trauma, everything I did before this helps me tremendously. Understanding trauma and neuropsychology and just how the brain works puts me at such an advantage in understanding people's past trauma and how it's affecting them now. Going through law school, studying family law helps me tremendously with helping people, guiding them through the divorce process. So if you had asked me if I would be a therapist specializing in helping people with big traumatic events and supporting women through the divorce process, I would have been like, no. But if you circle back to 18-year-old me, my first major in college was social work, and now I have my MSW. So now I understand where that comes from. Like everything that you do that's a little different is typically comes from some trauma that you had as a child. And for me, I adopted a narrative really early on, around 8 or 9 years old, that school is my thing and that would keep me safe. So if I did well in school and educated myself, that I would be able to always support myself. And watching my mother go through a divorce and be left to work in a factory to support us, working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for nothing, that message and that narrative was hardwired into me. And I would say that 8-year-old narrative pretty much ran the show until the last few years when I've done my own healing and therapy. So much of my worth was always tied up in my achievement academically. So I love being a student. I'm a good student. I thought I would go on and get a PhD, and now I'm like, probably don't really need it.
Who
It's
is that?
just another,
Yeah, who is
it's
that?
another wound that I would be healing if I did that. But yeah, that's how I
That's
got
impressive.
here.
I mean, we are a show about real estate, so we're definitely going to talk about real estate. And I think we're going to start with your experience and then with your advice, just because, you see a lot of this going on. You have been there since residency. You weren't there for the med school to residency swap, but I'm assuming residency and then a fellowship. What was that like? Because at that point, you were in law school in St. Louis while he was wrapping up residency. Did he own during residency? And then what did all that process look like?
We were still dating, but we purchased a condo in St. Louis. I believe it was during residency. It may have been fellowship. He did multiple fellowships because he's in interventional cardiology and also an overachiever. So he did all of that in St. Louis. We were fortunate that he did his residency in general medicine and his fellowships in cardiology and interventional cardiology all at WashU in St. Louis. So that was really helpful for us to be able to stay there. And as you said, I did start law school while I believe he was maybe already in fellowship when I started.
Okay.
But we did buy a condo. It was a fixer-upper. We were a little glutton for punishment. We did that twice. But it was great. That experience was really perfect for us. It was in Clayton. If any of your listeners are familiar with St. Louis, which I'm sure there are a lot.
Very nice area.
So it was very nice. My older son, who I came into the relationship with, went to school in Clayton. The school district there is phenomenal. And so it just made sense for us to stay there. Plus, we were both within a very short drive to everywhere we needed to go. And then my family, my sisters lived in, or still live in, St. Charles and O'Fallon on the Missouri side.
Which is only like 20 minutes from like St. Louis proper. So it's all the same place. For like a lot of big cities, that's like basically in the same area. But it's on the other side of a river. There's a bridge. Like people feel like it's another continent, even though it's literally like 20, 30 minutes away.
It didn't stop us from spending lots of time with them. And they were really helpful and supportive. It was really, really nice having family there with my son, especially because law school and his training were so demanding.
What was your transition like? I know that you guys kind of had an awkwardly timed transition to get down to Florida. Do you mind sharing about that?
Yeah, I think this is an important thing for me to share because I think it's something, there were decisions that had to be made that I think are really common in this situation. And I had decided to go ahead and stay an extra year and get the MHA at SLU. So he finished his final fellowship, and I was going to finish my JD MHA 1 year apart. So we had decided that we kind of areas we wanted to live, and a job opportunity came open in Florida, which we really wanted to move to Florida. And we made the decision while I was pregnant and in my 3rd year of my program for him to go ahead and move to Florida almost a year before us. That meant that my daughter was born, and 3 weeks later, he moved to Florida.
Mm.
And, the plan was he would come home every weekend, but the reality of that is he was a new interventional cardiologist in very high demand, and it just wasn't always possible. And in the beginning, he came more often, and then it started fading. And I think a few things, if there's any way to avoid having a year apart, I would say for anyone, then don't do it. It was really detrimental to us as a couple. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. As a couple, it was extremely challenging. So I'll talk about that first. I think we were considered like a young couple. We had been together for 4 years before getting married. So our relationship felt sturdy and established.
Mhm.
But there's so much that happens, I think, in that first year of practice. And he was going through that alone in Florida. Some of it was demanding of his time, and he was having some issues with the first practice he joined. But also, it's exciting, and there's just a lot going on.
Well, I think it's like nerve-wracking too to be like on your own, like as an attending that first year, the fear of doing that without having that feeling of having supervisors or in fellowship when you're in training, the responsibility change is a big shift.
Yeah. And we had been together and had been living together for quite some time, but now he's kind of getting a taste of living alone and a little bit of more of a bachelor life. Meanwhile,
You
I'm
got all the
in
kids.
St. Louis. I have a, 13-year-old playing club soccer and running him around everywhere, and a newborn. And I'm in a dual program in law and health administration, taking the maximum number of hours so that I can finish on time. So to say that we became disconnected would be an understatement. And I will say, both as a mother and as a therapist, the greatest travesty of making that decision was that the ability for my daughter and my ex-husband to bond was impossible.
Yeah.
And now, knowing what I know about attachment theory and how important 0 to 3 is for the rest of our life, I see in her the stress of having a mother in law school and being on her own. Like, I can see my anxiety from that period of time in her now. We work on that and we understand where it came from. But wow, if I could undo it.
Yeah.
And then the lack of bond with the two of them. It's something that I'm not sure you can get back. It's really difficult. So I think it was a huge, huge mistake for us. We had no idea.
And
I don't
everybody's
know if there would
situation
have
is
been.
different and compatibility and their ability to be alone. But like that specifically sounds like just an abundance of hardship on one side, particularly. And I mean, his as well, for sure. Each of you were
Mhm.
dealing with your own stressors, but just the wedge that creates, the
Oh, yeah.
misalignment that creates in a relationship and a parenting and family unit, that totally makes sense. So you
Yeah.
guys made it through, you graduated, you were done, and then you headed down to Florida.
Yes.
And the house that
So,
you guys got in Florida.
so when we arrived in Florida, we rented a condo on the beach. I was studying for the Florida bar, and we rented a very nice, like, overlooking the Gulf. It was beautiful. That we did right. Hired a nanny, lived in a condo for a while, and didn't think about buying until I passed the Florida bar. And then pretty quickly bought a house here. I think my advice would be to live in a place a little bit longer than we did, to get to know the environment and the market and talk to more people. We bought a house and then quickly realized we needed to gut it. There were a lot of things about Florida and mold and just things that we just didn't know. We didn't know what contractors were like here or how it was to work with people. There's a big difference between contractors in St. Louis that we had worked with versus the people here. So we quickly ran into a situation with someone who was unlicensed that said they were. Like, once we bought the house, it was like we opened Pandora's box of problems with the house and ended up realizing we needed to just gut it. So I think that was another challenge that we put upon ourselves. So I'm starting in a law firm as a brand new lawyer in my early 30s with 2 kids. And now he had moved to a new practice because the first one didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And we were now faced with like all of these decisions to make, essentially rebuilding a house that had structural issues and things that, again, we couldn't have seen all of the issues. But had we lived here a little bit longer and just asked lots of questions, we may have made a different purchase. I think in hindsight, waiting a little bit longer and finding a really nice rental would have been a less stressful option.
Yeah, I agree. Like when you don't know the area well and when there's special nuances like that. Was it something that was missed on inspections or something that just couldn't have been seen on inspections? Because like they can't see inside of walls. They can't see, if the basement's finished, if there is a basement, like they can't see what's not visible. So oftentimes people will come to me, a week, a month, a year after they move in and they're like, how did the inspector not see this? I'm like, he doesn't have x-ray vision. I'm sorry. Like,
Right.
and it was a snapshot in time. He saw your house for 2 hours tops. Like, they see what they can see and you just roll the dice with that sometimes.
Just to give you an idea, like we were also really young, even though we were in our early 30s and we both had all these degrees, we had no experience with this. And neither of us were assertive or aggressive in any way, shape, or form, right? We're both people pleasers. And when we were sitting at the table signing the closing documents, the previous owner's son, because it was an estate sale, said something like, well, when they moved the house, da 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 da. And we were like, what do you mean they moved the house? Oh, the house used to be at the end of the island and they picked it up and they moved it. Yeah, we have pictures of it. It was this big. So we went ahead and signed. I think now we would have stood up and been like, wait a minute, like we need to better understand what you mean. But we had our heart set on this house. The location was perfect for him being able to get to the office. He had a door to balloon time that we had to live with. And it allowed the kids and I to stay in St. Petersburg where we wanted to be. So we didn't want to believe that we should have walked away. We wanted it to work really bad.
Yeah.
We were mentally committed. And now I think both of us would walk away in a heartbeat if we had any doubts about a home because of the fact that the house had been moved created so many issues when we started rehabbing it. And we had no idea. We didn't know anything about construction.
And for those of you listening, my suggestion isn't just to like knee-jerk walk away. I always want to pause, do a little factory reset, ask the right questions, do the right research, see if you can extend your contingency period to allow more time to research and investigate. If you are having an anxiety, sometimes those anxieties are real and they're speaking up for a reason, or sometimes their anxiety is just because you're an anxious person, in which case you just need to check in with yourself and how you're feeling, but then also like with your realtor and let them know like, hey, am I crazy? Or is this something that we should look into? Because oftentimes you'll get an opportunity to like get your questions answered. And maybe the answer to that question is to walk away. But don't ignore those fears and those doubts because you don't want to be in a position where you're regretting the purchase and kicking yourself later for following through with something that your intuition was telling you to push pause on, at least for enough time to check in with yourself and figure out what the fear is and what it is that you're concerned about.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Now, having bought my own home, it's so important to have a realtor who you trust is going to pick up on these types of things and do their due diligence and answer all of your questions. And if you have any concerns, listen, because some realtors just want to sell you a house and
Mhm.
some want to sell you the right house. And we loved our realtor and she was great. It was just, there were a lot of things that weren't disclosed. I guess we didn't feel comfortable at that point in our lives speaking up and saying, wait a minute, what could be wrong with a house that had been moved? What are the things that we should look a little bit further into? And
Basically like a
we
giant
may have
earthquake for a
still,
long amount of time. That's crazy.
yeah, so a lot of missteps, I guess you could say. I mean, we rebuilt it and it was beautiful and we loved that house. Just it created so much work for me because he was so busy that I ended up really not being able to work, partially because of the house. I think if I were giving advice to a family that was in our situation, like a new practice, a new city, I would say live there a little while. But I would also say really think through any commitment to rebuilding or remodeling and be realistic, like
Mm.
about how much time you're going to have.
Money and time,
Yes. Yes.
because both are going to be more and longer.
Had we just bought a house, we probably would have saved money. We put in what we paid for it back into it to
Wow.
get it.
I mean, the primary reason people are purchasing right away whenever they're like getting that attending position and they're taking that first job is just like their lack of stability or feeling of a lack of stability over the past however many years of training. You're uprooting your
Mm,
life on repeat. And the feeling of having a house that you can call home, like finally, quote unquote, making it, being done with training, having this income that allows you to set roots and like literally plant them in the ground. This is our house. This is our dirt. This is our home. There's something I feel a little, I don't know, people are using that as a way to plant themselves and root themselves. And while it's good symbolically, it can cause problems if it's,
yeah.
I think that the average time that a physician stays at their very first position that they take, it used to be 6 or 8 years. It's 2 years. Your first
Yeah.
attending position on average will be 2 years in length.
Wow.
And then if you've got a non-compete and you bought a house, you have to move, you have to sell.
Yeah. He was only at his first position a little under a year and then switched. Luckily, in the Tampa Bay area, like he was in the very north part for the first position
Mhm.
and then took a position in the very southern part of the area. So the non-compete from the first place didn't go all the way down to Sarasota, Bradenton area. But I do think just wanting to feel settled played a huge role. We
Mm.
just wanted a place that was ours, that felt like home. It felt like an extra layer of security to have this house that was ours. And I can see that playing a role. We were fortunate that we didn't have to move all over for his residency and
Right.
fellowships, but for people who have been moving and moving and moving, like to have something that feels like it's yours, it's important.
And it's kind of like I picture like a toddler like stomping their foot and then like making themselves really heavy.
Yeah.
I picture this physician spouse and I'm stereotyping with like gender roles and like this woman like being like, no, I'm staying here. And she like puts her foot down and buys it because she's like, I'm not leaving again. Like, do not
Oh,
uproot
yeah.
my life. Don't do this to me. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly how I picture it being. You just want
Yeah.
to be here. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think a safe haven, like at that point, I had already realized that the kids and I were going to be alone a lot. So it felt like it was really, really important to have some place that was safe. It was a gated community. We had a big yard. It checked all the boxes, I thought. And the location was huge because of the distance. I think that's probably something a lot of the people you work with have to deal with. Like he had to be in the hospital doors within 20 minutes.
Do you feel like a lot of couples buy a home and attempt to kind of fix the marriage, like stabilize a marriage? They feel like purchasing a home and creating some kind of atmosphere or creating some kind of stability will somehow stabilize some kind of dynamic happening within the marriage.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And that was certainly true for us. When we reunited in Florida, things were really off. And that was the first 2 years here were the hardest. I think I said I'm going home to St. Louis probably 20 times. Like, I'm done. I'm leaving.
Mm.
So the house felt, okay, this will fix some of those issues and solidify things for us because it felt rocky, really rocky. But what happened in our situation, because of the level of work that the house needed, it's almost like people having a child thinking that will fix a relationship. And having a child is so hard. It actually adds to the tension. The house did that for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, had we bought something brand new that didn't need a ton of work, could that have changed the whole trajectory of how things went for us? It's possible. Unlikely, that we probably would still be divorced, but it definitely contributed.
Speed and trajectory of the demise. Well, just to pivot, because we've talked about like, you had all of these degrees and you've worn all these professional hats by this point, and you had to basically sacrifice all of the time and effort that you put into your education for the family, for the career, whatever. And like the resentment that builds and then like the lack of identity. I feel like, I mean, I went through that phase and I didn't have a bunch of like really cool degrees like you did. But whenever I left the working field to stay at home with kids, I quickly realized like that is not my personality. That is not my strong suit. I think that it takes a miraculous human being to want and thrive in that. And there are people out there like that. It's just that's not how I was raised. That's not how I operate. And so like I know a lot of women and I talk to them all the time when I'm selling homes that are really struggling because like maybe they were the breadwinners when their spouse was in training and now suddenly their salary or their income is dwarfed so much it almost feels like cute. Or, they stop working and now they're like, okay, well now what am I? Like I'm doctor wife. I don't think anybody likes that title. There's nothing necessarily positive that comes in connection with the title of a doctor wife. If anything, quite the opposite. It's like almost looked down on, like you're pretentious or you aren't allowed to complain or you're not allowed to have a bad day. But there's really lonely days and there's a weird identity issue happening and there's a lot of issues going on behind the scenes of a lot of loneliness.
So
Yeah.
much
So
loneliness.
just wanted to talk about that identity piece for you because I'm sure that that was horrible and also so common.
Okay, so yeah, the identity issues were also really challenging. So, yes, I had all these degrees. I thought when we left St. Louis, I thought he's going to be an interventional cardiologist and I'm going to be a lawyer and we've got this. And nobody could have told us that within a year of spending all that time and money on a law degree, that I would not be working. So I used to struggle so much. Like I would go to the school events because I was like trying to be busy. I was trying to find purpose, right? Like part of the reason I took up photography was to take photos at my son's soccer games so that I felt special and needed and important because the boys were like, oh my God, Miss Mathews, did you get that shot? Did you get this?
Uh-huh.
That gave me some feeling of self-worth. But I remember I was introducing myself and people would say, what do you do? Or do you stay home? So I'm simultaneously meeting these incredible women who are technically stay-at-home moms, but they're like super women, right? They're Betty Crocker, they're Martha Stewart, they're making homemade costumes for their kids. Their house appears to be perfect. And then I'm also meeting women who, like me, have a career. And I can no longer have the career that didn't seem to be working for our family that I didn't want. I had no desire to do the
You didn't want to make
incredible.
Halloween costumes?
I didn't want to make, I wanted to buy them and like order them and
I want Amazon to bring it to my front door.
right. I don't even want to have to go shopping for it.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't love taking care of my house. So I was so quickly lost and trying to figure out who I am. And I think what I started to do and what I learned to do was just be whoever I needed to be in the presence of different people, whatever they needed me to be. Like I started being that. And in my heart and my body, I was hating all of it and feeling a tremendous amount of shame for not wanting to play Legos with my kids. I sidestepped the playing a lot of times by I'd set up an activity and then I would photograph it. So I was trying my hardest to find a way to find joy and be what the kids needed me to be and what he needed me to be. But in my heart, like I wanted my career. I knew I needed a purpose that was different than that. I don't want to say bigger because I think those women who were doing it well and who loved it and who are thriving in it, they're incredible. And they are having a tremendous impact on the world, both through their children and all the ways that they touch other people's lives and work the school stuff and countless ways, right? And they're supporting their husband who's probably making a difference in the world. That just wasn't me. And so there was so much resentment brewing because he was getting to have his moment, right? And like he was and has become this world renowned interventional cardiologist. And I wanted that. Like that was my goal to be something, to make an impact, to support people in a way. You know, when I was in law school, I really studied access to care and I thought, I'm going to make a difference in people's lives. So, yeah, the struggle was constant and my identity was completely lost. I think when we spoke earlier and you said erasure, like that's what it felt like. And I didn't even really realize it was happening. I can look back and see it happening and see how it unfolded. And I think that the people in my life looking from the outside thought that I was doing amazing things. Like
You were busy.
I
Fill
had
your day.
opportunities to travel and like do travel photography. And it's so crazy because I loved that. Like I loved it. But even when I was traveling and doing the things that I loved, there was such an immense like amount of loneliness and confusion about who I was and what I wanted and what I wanted to be.
What would you recommend to any of the listeners right now? Because I have a feeling, a lot of physician spouses or physician families that are listening into this could probably relate in some way. Like, what would your recommendation be if someone feels like they're in this stage of life? I mean, some of it's dependent on the age of the kids and
Right.
a lot of different variables, but what would you do
Oh,
differently and what would you recommend?
I would say that if coming into the relationship and into the marriage, you have a career that you're passionate about, you feel like you're already doing whatever it is you're meant to do, not to ever give that up fully, even if you need to go part-time, like always continue to do the things that make you feel full and feel like you, and keep the people in your life that allow you to be yourself. That's one. And I would say if someone's listening and they've already given it up, they're already stayed home, they're living in a fog. That's how I felt. I felt like I was in a fog. I had no idea who I was and no idea how I got there, even. I would say find a therapist or a life coach first because it's really hard to get yourself out of that place on your own and start doing the work on yourself, physical, mental. Use your body as a gauge. I had rheumatoid arthritis that started really flaring. I dealt with a lot of inflammation. It was the worst it had ever been. Now, post-divorce, I'm not taking anything for that. So listen to your body. And if you're having migraines or inflammation or any number of health issues, I think asking yourself what's really causing that. Is your body trying to tell you something? It just takes a lot of digging, right? Like digging down and figuring out how you got where you are once you're lost. And that's why I say, like, getting a life coach or a therapist who can help you figure out what's going to fill you back up and bring you back to your authentic self is really important.
I love all of that. I definitely agree with, if you're feeling lost in yourself, I mean, like that's a clear sign that you probably need someone to talk to that's outside of your like current circle and therapists and, counselors or whatever it is that you think that is going to suit your needs best is definitely someone that you should have, just like a PCP or anything else.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people lean on their family and friends, but specifically as a physician spouse, it's really difficult to complain about your life. And people say a lot of things that are not helpful, but they don't mean to harm you. Like they just don't understand. Oh, this is what you signed up for. Well, I didn't know that this is what I signed up for. Like, this is not how it
They
was in the
truly don't
beginning. I
help.
didn't know I didn't know it was going to be like this. So that's really not helpful. And a lot of my friends would say, well, at least you have a good life. Just live it. Take the kids to Disney World every weekend and you're getting to travel and you're doing all of these things. Like you have a beautiful house. You have a beautiful
A lot
people
of people cling
pointing
to what they
out.
see materialistically. I think we see Instagram and they're like, well, people that have material things must be happy. Quite
Yeah.
the opposite, ladies and gentlemen. People
Yeah.
with a lot of things are actually quite often fairly miserable.
Yep. I was the little girl who secretly romanced everything, right? I was that way all the way through, like listening to love songs. I imagined that being sung to me. Like I wanted to be the woman that they were singing about in the song. I married someone who was very intelligent and safe, gave me like immense security. The reason for that is also tied up in my childhood. But going from this little girl who dreamed of the fairy tale and then being alone, always alone in everything was just hard.
Yeah, that would be
And
hard to
nobody could
reconcile.
understand because on the outside, it looked like the most incredible life, right?
Well, the wheels fell off.
Yep.
And we don't have to get into like the catalyst and whatever. I think that it's pretty clear there was a fairly genuine wearing away of self and relationship and whatever. But just to pivot back to real estate for a moment, what ended up happening with your big, beautiful house? Was that a contentious thing in the divorce, or was that something that you guys navigated through after all that work you put into it?
Yes. So the house, we had a major issue with the house, which kind of created an avenue for us to make the decision to separate. And here in Florida, one thing, this is important if any of your listeners are moving to Florida, we upgraded our air conditioning unit. It was a pretty big house. And when they came and they installed, they upsold us. So they sold us a bigger air conditioning unit than what we had, actually 2 units. But they didn't modify the size and configuration of the ductwork. So for 2 years, without us realizing it, the ductwork was dripping condensation onto the drywall. So just before I made the decision to leave the marriage, but it had been discussed. Like, I think we both knew it was inevitable at that point. But when we realized that the ceilings had to be taken out of the house because there had been mold growing and the kids and I had been getting sick, that was an avenue to find a rental, a more permanent rental for the kids and I. And all of this was happening just after COVID. And he had already gotten an apartment closer to the hospital because during COVID, it was so intense, his work. So it kind of just happened. And the timing of that was good in that it was a lot to go through, but the timing was good in that it was time. And I don't think either of us knew how to pull the plug with the kids and I living in the house. So we fixed the house, got all the work done, and the kids and I were in a rental for about 1.5 to 2 years, roughly. And then I was able to buy a house once we sold the house. So once we moved out, as soon as we realized there was an issue in the ceilings, none of us ever moved back in. We got the house ready for sale in that process.
Do you feel like the house is often like a big barrier in when you're counseling people and they're going through divorce? Is the house oftentimes like a big thing that they're clinging to or having a hard time of letting go with? Or I think I mentioned this earlier. It's like the house is like a third person in the marriage or a third entity in the marriage, and that it becomes like such this big point of contention that people are clinging to and having a hard time leaving. And
Yes. And there's a huge grieving process. I had to go through it. I've walked people through it. A grieving of the marriage, but a grieving of specifically the house. Your children are probably grew up there. So many memories were made. And even though I wanted to leave the house and I wanted to sell the house, I still have dreams about being inside the house. There's still a mourning, and there will be forever, of that house. But what I see in the people that I work with is that, especially when someone has been left, they're not the one making the decision to end the relationship. The attachment to the house is really difficult to break. And people want so desperately to hold on to it. And from what I've witnessed so far, in many, many cases, selling it is the easiest avenue. Like, sell it and start fresh. Everybody gets their own fresh new place. But I think that that's really hard when somebody is being forced to do it. Meaning, I work with a lot of women who didn't want to divorce. Something happened that was irreparable. And now they are forced to leave this place that they love. And I think that's really difficult. On the other side of that, I see on the other side of divorce, when my clients and myself, like when we get into the new house that's ours and it's just ours, right? Like, I realize that's not something that happens for everyone. Not everyone can afford to buy their own home.
But even an apartment or any kind of
Even an
space that you just
apartment.
put your own touches
Yes.
in.
Yeah. The rental house we lived in between was essentially a tear down, right? Like, it was in a fabulous neighborhood, but every appliance in the house broke while I lived there and they had to replace it. Every appliance. That's how old the house was. And we went from this huge new place to this small little place with old appliances and weird spackling on the walls and stuff. But it still felt really peaceful, and it felt like it was ours, the kids and I's, once we got there. So, yeah, we loved it. We love our house now more than any place, but that was really great. Again, I think it's different for every person, and it's a relief for people when they can sell. And it's also like something that you have to grieve.
As a real estate agent, we always say, like, keep the emotions out of the transaction. It's hard. It's hard to do
really
that.
hard.
It's really hard. Like, there is grieving. I've held goodbye parties for houses for families that were having a hard time, even when they're, not divorcing. Maybe they're just, retiring or downsizing, or they have to relocate. And this was a home that they raise their kids in, like you said, or never imagined leaving, and then they do. And it's just, there's a million reasons why you may have to leave a home. And I think that you always just like leave a little bit of your heart in each like
Mm-hmm.
space that you fill with your family, because there's just special memories there. So you're not crazy for being emotional about the house.
No. Whatever reason you stay, I work with a lot of women who are contemplating, like they're trying to decide whether to do the work on the relationship or
Mhm.
whether it's time to walk away. And so the discernment period is something I walk through with a lot of people. And a lot of people stay for the house. So in my house, I had built a butterfly house and it was beautiful, beautiful. I fell in love with monarch butterflies and saving them and basically almost
You had a
like
habitat for butterflies?
I had a beautiful, I wish I could show you a picture of it, a beautiful screened in enclosure for the butterflies. And it was full of butterfly plants and it was incredible. We had grown mango trees from when they were just little baby mango trees and now they had become big and I had gardens. So I definitely stayed for some of that part. I remember saying, I don't think I can leave my mango tree. Like, that sounds ridiculous.
I
Now
know.
I have
In
my own mango
retrospect,
tree.
it does sound crazy, but those are the things in those moments that you're like, I grew that tree. It's my
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah. The people who own the house now they also have fully embraced the butterfly house
Oh, I love
and
that.
they
Good.
continued on with,
Did you write that into the contract? Like,
right? I'm
must
like, you
keep
have to save the
butterflies alive.
butterflies. But yeah, like the things that we are attached to, they make us feel safe. They make our nervous system feel safe. For me, sitting in the butterfly house, sitting in the garden, it was my respite. Like that was where I found my peace. It was funny because the outdoor spaces felt peaceful, but inside the house, it didn't. It felt stressful. So I think that's something that I could recognize now as a sign. Like if there are certain parts of your home that feel really, really peaceful and certain parts that don't, like ask yourself the why. And I think the biggest takeaway from that is like I have recreated a really zen, beautiful space. And it isn't as big, but it's all mine. And it feels that much better because I've created it with so much more intention this time. And
Mhm.
it's very peaceful. And my entire house feels peaceful, except for when my 15-year-old goes through puberty things, then we don't have peace. But in general, I think that you can recreate whatever feelings you have, positive feelings in your home. You can recreate it in another home.
I agree with that.
But when you're in the thick of it, it's really hard to see that and to believe it.
Yeah. Like I said, door number 2, you don't know what's through it.
You don't know. And life on the other side is really wonderful.
It's a little weird.
I wish I could go back and tell that older version of me, like, everything is going to be okay. I promise you, everything is going to be okay. And it's going to be even better than that. Like, life's going to be incredible on the other side. But it's scary. And all of the things people go through, even just the transition from fellowship and moving to another city, like leaving your family. I had to leave my sisters. Like, that was all really scary. And I had no idea. I didn't know if I was going to love Florida. I didn't like it for the first 2 years. But people told me that. They said it takes a while to get used to it. I was like, but I miss St. Louis. I miss the culture. I miss
You
Forest
missed that
Park.
it was 70 degrees yesterday and 19 degrees today.
Don't miss that.
Don't
I
miss
don't
that.
miss that.
It's cold today. I opened the door and I was like, nope.
And I
It is
don't miss the
not yesterday.
brown. Like now when we go home and then we fly back and it's green here, I'm like, oh, thank God. Thank God. I love the
I
green.
know. I'm looking forward to April when you see that first pop of color on a tree and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, life returns.
Yeah.
Because actually, we have blue skies today, so it's not as bleak. It's the gray days that are just soul sucking here in St. Louis sometimes, but
Yeah.
we've had a lot of blue lately. Well, if
Yes.
there's anybody listening that is standing at a crossroads, maybe unsure, like whether they're holding on or letting go of a relationship, of a home, whatever, I feel like they should probably be talking to someone. Leslie, are you someone that they can talk to? Can they reach out?
Absolutely.
Yes. And how would they get in
Yes.
touch with you?
They can look at my Instagram, which is the LooM Life, and my website is loomlife.com, theloomlife.com, and Facebook, of course. And I believe in Facebook, you can look at my personal profile, Leslie Mathews, or the LooM Life. That's my business name.
Do they have to be in
And
Florida for your services, or do you serve?
so for therapy in Florida, but for support and coaching, they can be anywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's. Well, I
So I
appreciate you so
do
much.
EMDR,
Oh, good. Okay, cool. Keep going.
EMDR and like IFS, internal family systems, which is parts work,
Mhm.
and EMDR with my therapy clients. That's something I can't really do outside of Florida just for licensing issues right now. I think that's all going to change soon. But
Can
I
you do
support,
EMDR online?
you can do EMDR online. However, it's considered a pretty strict like therapy modality. Most things can cross over between therapy and coaching, but there are a few modalities that we use, including EMDR, where that is considered therapy. So that's something, though, like I said, the laws are evolving and
Yeah.
licensing rules are evolving. So,
Access to care
but
and
I support several women who are either physician wives or they are in the process of leaving a physician marriage. And I even have a few physicians, male physicians, that I support in helping them with their relationship and kind of helping guide them. And that's definitely a more therapy based relationship with those clients. But
yeah. Do you do any couples counseling?
I do some couples counseling. I love teaching couples about the nervous system. There's something called polyvagal theory. My boyfriend now and I, we talk in nervous systems when we have ruptures or disagreements or whatever, and it's a whole different way to approach relationships, and I love teaching it to other people because it really can save a relationship and just make it so much easier to navigate like the ups and downs.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I love that and highly encourage anyone in need to reach out to Leslie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate all of your words of wisdom and to hear about your story and your journey and your missteps and things you would repeat and things you would not. But I'm grateful that you were here today.
Thank you so much for having me.